How are you?
I can't complain.
So, I am such a big fan. I absolutely, really, really connect to everything you talk about. I use your supplements. I tell everybody about them, and you're younger than I am, of course. I'm actually 5 years older than you are, and your birthday is July 11th, and mine
Yeah.
is June 27th. So
Oh.
we're both Cancer crabs.
Cancers, yeah.
But it's become my sort of deal in life to talk about aging with power and to encourage people to look at beauty through healthy lifestyle. And you obviously had your discovery about that and look as good as you look because you live that lifestyle. But first of all, I interview doctors who are very established, have great reputations, so that my clients who trust me can also trust in what they say. So if you could tell us a little bit about your background, and then we can move forward from that.
Well, so where do I begin? I went to Yale University as an undergraduate, and I had a special major back in those dark ages. We could design our own major. And I wanted to defend a thesis that said, it was called human evolutionary biology. And we'd call it epigenomics now, but I basically said you could take a great ape, change its food supply, change its environment, and you would prove that a human being would be the result. And I actually spent 4 years and wrote a thesis and defended my thesis and got an honors for it. And then I gave my thesis to my parents. And I subsequently went on to become a world famous heart surgeon. I and my partner, Leonard Bailey, pioneered infant and pediatric heart transplantation. I've done more infant heart transplantation than any living person. I pioneered robotic surgery. I invented several devices and patented them. They're still used in most heart surgeries to keep hearts alive. Fun fact, I was the world's leader in xenotransplantation, which means taking the heart from one species and put it into another. And actually, I had the longest living pig to baboon heart transplant in an unmodified pig. And so I like to think I paved the way for, the current pig to human transplant that Bartley Griffith did.
Wow. Yeah.
At the University of Maryland. And so I was also famous for operating on people that nobody else wanted to operate on. And that actually led me, when I was professor and chairman at Loma Linda University, to meeting a guy who changed my life and my career, who I call Big Ed in all my books. He's a real person from Miami, Florida. He was 48 years old, and he had inoperable coronary artery disease. Everything in his coronary arteries was clogged up. You couldn't put stents in. You couldn't do bypass surgery because there wasn't any place to put a bypass. And people like Big Ed would go around the country to very famous centers looking for an idiot surgeon to take him on. And he kept getting turned down, rightfully so. And he spent about 6 months doing this. And kind of as part of this journey that people go on, he ended up in my office at Loma Linda. And I looked at his angiogram, the movie of his coronary arteries from 6 months previous. And I basically told Ed, look, there's nothing I can do for you. Everybody's right. Sorry, I don't turn down people, but I'm not going to help you. He says, yeah, that's what everybody's told me, but I've been on a diet for 6 months and I lost 45 pounds. Now, this guy was huge. He was 265 pounds when I met him, hence Big Ed. And he said, I went to a health food store and I bought a bunch of supplements, and he literally brought in this giant shopping bag full of supplements. And he says, and I've been taking these, and, maybe I did something in my heart. So, I'm scratching my professor beard and going, well, good for you for losing weight, but that's not going to change anything, Ed. And I know what you did with all those supplements. You made expensive urine. You wasted your money. And I firmly believe.
Right.
So he said, well, look, come on, I've come all this way. What would it hurt to get another angiogram, another movie? And, okay. So we did. And in 6 months' time, this guy cleaned out 50% of the blockages in his heart.
Wow.
I mean, gone.
Wow.
Now, I'd never seen anything like it. In fact, never read anything like it. And I go, wait a minute, this is impossible. So first thing I said, okay, wait a minute, tell me about this diet. And so he starts rattling off what he's doing. And I go, wait, time out. I said, this is my thesis from Yale. This is my undergraduate thesis about what ancient man ate. Right. And I actually called my parents and I said, hey, do you have my thesis? And they said, yeah, it's up there someplace. It's in the shrine next to the eternal flame. And I said, well, send it to me. So then I said, let me look through these supplements. And like I said, I was very famous for protecting the heart during operations and for heart transplant, putting a heart in a bucket of ice water for 48 hours. And I had designed various substances that we'd put down the veins and arteries of the heart to protect it from damage. And I start looking through his thing of supplements, and here's a bunch of those substances that are in his, bag of goodies. And I'm going, holy cow. I've been using these, down the veins and arteries. It never occurred to me to swallow them. So what's so poignant is I was, a big, fat, obese heart surgeon. I had pre-diabetes. I had such bad arthritis. I was running 30 miles a week, going to the gym 1 hour a day. And I was, a Clydesdale runner. And, I was wearing braces on my knees because I had such bad arthritis, and I had pre-diabetes and high blood pressure. I would do baby heart transplants with a migraine headache. I don't recommend it. So long story short, I followed my diet and started taking a bunch of supplements. And I lost 50 pounds my first year, and I lost subsequently another 20, and I've kept it off for 25 years now. But what I did is everybody who I operated on at Loma Linda, I would put them on this program. And they'd come back and their diabetes or their pre-diabetes was gone. Their arthritis was gone. We had to take them off of their blood pressure medicines. And so after about a year of doing this, I had an epiphany. My wife still calls it Black Friday. It was a Friday. I'm looking in the mirror before I go to work, and I go, I'm making a horrible mistake. I shouldn't operate on people and then teach them how to eat.
Right.
I should teach them how to eat, and then I won't have to operate on them.
Right.
Now, as a heart surgeon, that's a really bad, career choice.
Yeah.
So, looking back, what a stupid thing to do. So I resigned my position at the height of my career and set up a clinic in Palm Springs. I subsequently have another one now in Santa Barbara, where I would invite patients to come in and see me every 3 months. Let's send off a bunch of blood work that insurance will pay for. And I want you to take certain things out of your diet. And I want you to go to Costco or Trader Joe's and buy supplements. There wasn't an Amazon back then, or a health food store. And let's see what happens. And, you're going to be my research project. And lo and behold, I started publishing what we found. And it was fairly dramatic. And then my first book came out in 2007, Dr. Gundry's Diet Evolution. And I profiled a few people with autoimmune diseases that went into remission on the program. And so lots of people with autoimmune disease started pounding on the door. And subsequently, about 80% of my practice now is people with leaky gut and autoimmune disease. And I guess my breakthrough book was The Plant Paradox, which is now in April, it'll be five years. And it's been, a huge New York Times bestseller and an international bestseller. It's 37 languages. And that started the Paradox series, the longevity paradox, the energy paradox. And so most of my experience now is in the gut microbiome and leaky gut. And I've become, a world expert on something I never thought I would be a world expert on, is the gut microbiome and leaky gut.
This is a good point to say that the gut and all of the information now that we're becoming more aware of around the gut and everything that it affects doesn't just affect people who are of a certain age. It does not discriminate. And I think my audience is a very broad age range and very diverse lifestyle audience. And most of us think about looking good, right?
Sure.
But when your gut is not feeling good, you feel bloated, you feel out of sorts, you're just not looking as beautiful as you think you would like to look because you feel so bad. Can you just tell everyone what is the story about the gut? What is leaky gut? What are the issues and why do they exist?
So a few years ago, I coined a phrase which is behind me, and I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
The road to health is paved with good intestines. And Hippocrates said 2,500 years ago that all disease begins in the gut. And recently, one of my patients, who's a Buddhism expert, actually translated an ancient Sanskrit text from the Buddha. And the Buddha said, enlightenment comes from the intestines. And they were actually contemporaries, Hippocrates and Buddha. And how these great individuals knew, 2,500 years ago, before we had sophisticated tests, that everything was related, to the gut and intestines. It's just, it blows my mind every time I think about it. It actually humbles me a great deal. But the lining of your intestines are basically your skin turned inside out. And that lining of your intestines is a huge area. It's the same surface area as a tennis court. And we have a problem. We have a design flaw. The lining of our gut is only one cell thick, and it spans a tennis court. So these little cells are held together with what are called tight junctions. I'm old enough to remember a game called Red Rover, where we had two lines of kids, and we all locked arms, and one kid came running across and tried to break through the line. Almost all cultures have that game. So these cells are held together, locked arm in arms, because everything you swallow and all the bacteria, the microbiome, should be on their side of the fence. Now, what's amazing is 80% of all of our white blood cells, our immune system, lines the gut. Because, quite frankly, that's where mischief can come across. So my research and others, Dr. Alessio Fasano, who's now at Harvard, has shown that certain plant particles called lectins, and gluten, by the way, is a lectin. These are proteins that we now have proven can actually attach to the wall of the gut and break these tight junctions so that now you have a gap. So lectins can come across the gap, bacterial particles can come across the gap, and even normal food particles can actually come across the gap. And it's called intestinal permeability, but most of us know it as leaky gut. And it's not pseudoscience. We can measure it, and we can measure it repairing itself with, believe it or not, what I talk about in all my books. And I've published data that 94% of people with autoimmune disease and leaky gut in about 9 to 12 months go into remission, repair their leaky gut just by following a few simple rules. So getting back to beauty, we now know that, both the Buddha and Hippocrates was right, that what happens in the lining of the gut is reflected in our skin. And, so many times, I'm, quote, an old guy now, but people, when they meet me, would say, let me see your skin. Let me see your hands. Oh my gosh, you don't have the hands of an old man. You don't have the skin of an old man. What the heck? Well, that's because I've worked, for 25 years now to take care of my gut and take care of my microbiome. And getting back to depression and anxiety, we now know that it's the composition of the microbiome and what we feed these friendly bacteria that actually determines, to a great extent, our mood and whether we're depressed or anxious. And you're right, that mood is reflected in us, right?
So you just touched on two really important topics. The first one about skin. So I'm always asked what I do, what do I use on my skin? Well, at 50, I decided if I put face makeup on, it's going to look like I'm trying to hide wrinkles, which there's no way I'm going to be able to do. And I don't want to. It is what it is. But the tip that I give is I use a cream that's made at the olive orchards with old-fashioned ingredients. They're great. The things I use are very simple, timeless. But the secret is what you put in your body that gives your skin that. I mean, you talk about olive oil. I even sell olive oil because that's one of the things that I look at as a beauty product and that I really recommend. So I think your skin and my skin, I don't have anything on my skin. I'm doing this because I don't have anything on it. I don't want to hide it. I want it to show and be, showing what my skin looks like. When I look pale and I'm not feeling that I don't look so good, it's very often that I've gone off course or I ate something and maybe didn't even realize that it was something that was going to affect me. And we're all really the best barometer for something went wrong because we can see it. It's like having a hangover in the morning if you drink or something like that. The other is mental health. There is so much stress in the world just listening to the news. And then in each and every one of our lives, we have a tremendous amount of stress, whether it's you broke up with your boyfriend or something ended that you thought was going to last forever. And all of these life experiences are going to be there. It's how you're prepared to handle them. And people underestimate how much food and what we put in our body can really support that. And the best thing is to see if you give a kid a sugary dessert, they're going to start running around the table like they're little mice in a cage. And that's us too, except we're running around in our heads like crazy people. So what are if we were to address those two things, and I am happy for you to plug whatever you have because BioComplete is, I feel, so much a part of my regime. I really see a difference. And I try a lot of things. I try a lot of supplements, and I'm a believer in supplements, but not every one of them gives you a result or you feel different. So for those two sort of your gut and your skin and your gut and your brain, what people want, just tell me what to take.
Well, yeah, thanks for a shout out for BioComplete 3 from my
Right.
supplement food company, Gundry MD. Actually, last year, I'm not supposed to say my favorite supplement that I make, but
Okay.
I was pushed. I don't know why, and I actually asked, my handlers. I say, "Can I say what's my favorite supplement?" And they said, "Well, yeah, why don't you? Why not?" And I said, "Well, it's BioComplete 3."
Oh, is it really?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so good.
Well,
So good.
so one thing, I'm, as far as I know, the only physician. I see patients still 6 days a week. I even see them on the weekends.
No.
And on the seventh day, I'm at Gundry MD. So I actually work 7 days a week. So all of my formulas are actually designed by me based on the research that I've done with my patients or other human research that I've read and tried. I don't give anybody anything I've never tried on myself. So BioComplete 3, most people have heard of probiotics, friendly bacteria. And people are beginning to hear about prebiotics, which are the foods, the fiber that friendly bacteria need to eat.
Right.
And these guys, in turn, make a whole new word that most people haven't heard of yet called postbiotics. So there's probiotics, friendly bacteria, there's prebiotics, the things friendly bacteria want to eat, and then there's postbiotics. And what's fascinating is postbiotics are literally how bacteria communicate to us about what they want us to do and what's going on in the outside world. And they actually have a language that's now been deciphered. It's been learned. So BioComplete 3 is several probiotics that actually have been proven to get to the gut. Most don't. Prebiotics that have been proven to feed those friendly bacteria. Think of it as fertilizer for the bacteria. But one of the holy grails of postbiotics is a short chain fatty acid called butyrate, butyric acid. Fun fact, butter is named after butyric acid because there's a little bit of butyrate in butter, not much. So butyrate is one of the keys to the kingdom in terms of great health. It supports actually the wall of our colon. Colon cells burn butyrate as their fuel. Butyrate actually tells our mitochondria, those little energy producing organelles in all of our cells, to protect themselves and to do better. And that's actually the subject of the new book, Unlocking the Keto Code. But the problem is you can swallow all the butyrate in the world and it never gets down to the colon where it's supposed to go. So a few years ago, I found a company that could nano encapsulate butyrate and put it in little liposomes that made it all the way down into the gut where it was supposed to go. And I went, oh, wow, this would be miraculous if this really worked. And so we try it on test subjects and we don't even tell them what's in it. And all these guys said, holy cow, what's going on? I feel better. I have more energy. I'm actually losing some weight. What the heck is in this? And so, fun story. And I had tried it for several months, so I thought we had a home run. Fun story. When we finally released it, it sold out in actually a couple hours. And
Really?
I went to get my next jar at Gundry MD, and I said, I'm out. Can I have a jar? And they said, we don't have any. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? This is mine. And then they said, no, we sold it. You got to wait. And so, but yeah, BioComplete 3 really is amazing stuff. And it's become really our biggest seller because people notice the difference.
Right away. Away. It's really, and I realized that too my skin care products that I make, if it's not working right away and you have to wait 6 weeks or 2 weeks to see how it's working, it's not working. It's just not working. But I saw such a difference, and I'm basically healthy. So for a supplement to really get my attention, it has to really present something different. And I really am so happy to have you on so that I don't sound like a fashion designer talking about supplements. Like, what do you know? I wanted people to hear you because I really want them to try it. And if there's one word that you can use in my industry that is like the holy grail of terror, is bloat, right? And one of the things that to me was the instant big change was that if whatever I ate, it could be too many greens, it could be whatever that gives you bloat. It doesn't have to be something bad.
Right.
To have bloat is just so annoying and it's disturbing. You just feel awful. And I really feel different. I also feel like keeping my weight and feeling, I know this is going to sound weird, but energetic. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I didn't feel weighted by anything that wasn't right. But I'm so happy for you to share that. I really want to hear about your book. I'm so anxious to hear about the keto because I'm not an expert on it. And I'd love to hear from you, first of all, what the book is about and why we should know about this diet.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're very interested in plant-based diets, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes.
Well, one of the problems with a traditional ketogenic diet is that it's basically 80% fat and animal protein that contains fat and lots of cheeses. And so I take care of a lot of vegetarians and vegans because of my association with Loma Linda, which is an Adventist medical school.
Right.
And quite frankly, a lot of my sickest people when I meet them are vegans because in the United States, so many vegans are pasta and grain and beanitarians, as
Right.
I describe them.
Right.
And that's quite frankly not very good for your health, but we don't have to go down that road. So one of the things, I've had a ketogenic version of all my diets in all my books, which interestingly enough doesn't have a whole lot of fat and has a lot of plant-based carbohydrates. And we've been very successful using it. And when I was doing my last book, The Energy Paradox, I was doing a chapter trying to explain why ketones are useful for weight loss. And I like to back up everything I write with published research, including my own. And as I was getting into this, I went, oh my gosh, what I've been telling people and what everybody else has been telling people about how ketones make you lose weight is 180 degrees wrong. Plain old wrong. And as a researcher, I love to admit I was wrong. I've been at this now for 50 years, and I hope I've learned something in 50 years that changes my opinion. So what we found was that ketones in general are made when we starve. And they are made because we can normally burn glucose as a fuel in our mitochondria. But normally, if there's no glucose, we should be able to switch to burning what are called free fatty acids, fat as a fuel. And we should do that effortlessly, almost like a hybrid car. When you run out of gasoline, the battery starts working. If you're running on gasoline, you charge the battery, and let's call the battery fat. And we should just switch back and forth. So fat can provide a fuel for really all of our cells except our brain. And the brain would love to use fat as a fuel, except we have this crazy barrier called the blood-brain barrier that these fats cannot get through this barrier quickly. So luckily, fats can go to the liver when we're starving, and the liver turns them into these water-soluble fats called ketones or ketone bodies. And these guys can get up to the brain. And so the brain can burn ketones as a temporary device until we find the next food supply, whether it's a bunch of berries or tubers or whether it's an antelope. And so we were designed to be able to do this. And when that was discovered, people said, wow, ketones must be great because the brain, likes ketones. And a lot of research at Harvard and the NIH by Dr. Cahill and Dr. Veach tried to suggest that ketones were a super fuel and that we should always be burning ketones. The problem is their research actually said the exact opposite. For instance, at full ketosis on a ketogenic diet, only 30% of our energy needs can be met by ketones. The rest has to come from free fatty acids. And the brain, even at full ketosis, 30 to 40% of all the fuel the brain needs has to come from glucose, not ketones. So then you step back and go, wait a minute, this isn't a super fuel, but they're really good for losing weight. How come? And it turns out ketones actually act as what's called a signaling molecule. And a signaling molecule basically tells mitochondria what to do and how much energy to produce, how much energy to waste. And what ketones do is mitochondria, making ATP, making energy is really hard work for mitochondria. It's a pressure cooker, and I use the example of a very hip club that they would wear your fashions to couple up with another eligible person. And there's a lot of steamy stuff going on in the club. There's a lot of drinking. There's a lot of hormonal fury. It's like a pressure cooker. And a pressure cooker can do a lot of damage, but the pressure cooker has a pop-off valve. So if the pressure gets too high, you release that pressure. Otherwise, it explodes. And my mother exploded a pressure cooker when I was growing up. It was great fun.
Pretty.
Hit the ceiling. So it turns out that mitochondria are under pressure to produce energy. And mitochondria have a design to release that pressure through pressure release valves. And it's got a fancy name called mitochondrial uncoupling. I didn't make up the name. It was described in 1978. But it turns out the more you uncouple mitochondria, the more you tell them to release pressure through these pop-off valves, and there's actually 5 of them, the better mitochondria function and the less damage from mitochondria and the more mitochondria make. So it turns out ketones actually tell mitochondria to pop these pressure valves off and to make more of themselves. Why would you want to do that? Well, you could have a dog sled with one dog and the dog could pull the sled, but it'd be a lot of work for that dog and he'd get tired pretty quick. But if you hitch 6 dogs to the same sled, now each dog has to do a 1/6 of the work that the one dog had to do. But the only problem is those 6 dogs have to eat a lot more food than the one dog. Well, it turns out the more mitochondria you make and the more pressure valves they release, the more food you waste in the process of making energy. And it turns out you do a caloric bypass by producing ketones and you actually throw calories away. And in the fashion industry, the ability to throw calories away without suffering the consequences of gaining weight sounds like a really good idea. So ketones actually tell mitochondria to waste calories and make more of themselves. Now, here's what's really exciting. If you look at super old people, folks in their late 90s, early 100s who are thriving, who look great, who are, climbing up hills, herding sheep, they have the most uncoupled mitochondria of anybody. Wow. Yeah, wow. So now you know that, and you go, I wonder if there are other ways to uncouple mitochondria, because it sounds like these uncoupled mitochondria might be the key to not only longevity, but health span, staying healthy and vibrant till we get to, 106. And then it's okay. I probably go to sleep. It's okay. Although we have a saying in our clinic, 150 is the new 100. So
I know. My goal was 120. I read several. I mean, I'm sure you've read them too, about the last cell turnover is at 120, and I said, okay, then that works for me.
Yeah.
And having that as a goal, you think about every day, well, if I'm going to get to 120, what are the choices I'm going to make today at 76, right? So
right.
I carefully make those decisions. But now, this 150 thing, I don't know. We got a lot of work to do.
Well, and, the exciting thing is, once you dive into the research of what's called mitochondrial uncoupling, you realize that this really may be the fountain of youth. And the cool thing is there are so many ways rather than a ketogenic diet to achieve this. Let me give you just a couple of examples. We know that thanks to work actually from the NIH, from a doctor by the name of Rafael de Cabo, they looked at a bunch of mice. And we know that in general, calorie restriction, that is reducing the amount of calories you eat by 30% every day, extends lifespan. But nobody's going to do that, quite honestly. It's nearly impossible for a human to do that for a very long time. But Dr. Cabo looked at all these calorie restriction models, and he says, I think we're making a mistake. When we control what an animal's eating and when they're eating, we put out their food usually once a day in their cage. And if animals have 30% less food every day, they're really hungry. So when the food comes out, they eat it really quickly. And it's gone. And then they have to wait till the next day to get some more. And he said, I think it's actually not the fact that we're restricting their calories, but the fact that they're fasting for a longer period of time every 24 hours. Right. So he designed some really elegant experiments, and sure enough, he found that mice who were given the exact same amount of food, if you gave it to them only once a day rather than having them nibble all day, they'd live 11% longer than the mice that got the same amount of food, and they wouldn't get markers of Alzheimer's disease, and they wouldn't get markers of cancer, which would normally kills most mice. You translate that into human beings, we get an automatic 10 extra years just by reducing the time we eat. And the book goes into how we do that. So the magic number is somewhere between 6 and 8 hours a day of eating. Mm-hmm. That means not eating for around 16 to 18 hours every day. And I've been actually, for the last 22 years, from January through June, I eat one meal a day. I eat all my calories in a 2-hour window from 6 to 8 o'clock at night. And I'm fasting for 22 hours a day. And I've done that now for 22 years. So I know it's really pretty easy to do. There's a really cool study with Italian athletes that I talk about in the book. You take Italian athletes, they're cyclists. You put them on a training table. That means they have to eat the same food. One group eats a 12-hour window. They eat breakfast at 8 o'clock. They eat lunch at 1 o'clock. They have to finish dinner at 8 o'clock. They eat 12 hours. The other group eats a 7-hour window. They have break fast at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They have lunch at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They have to finish dinner at 8. Same food, same amount of calories. You follow them for 3 months. Only the athletes who compressed their eating window to 7 hours lost weight. Their athletic performance was identical. And here's the best part. There's a marker of longevity called insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. The lower your IGF-1, quite frankly, the longer you're going to live, the longer you're going to live well, and the less likely you are to get cancer. These guys plummeted their IGF-1. The other athletes eating the 12-hour window, no such benefits. They didn't lose any weight. Their IGF-1 didn't change. Mm-hmm. So just this mere change in compressing eating windows has a dramatic effect.
Yeah.
And in the book, I talk people through how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And I hold their hand. We don't, believe me, we're not going to start breakfast at noon tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you eat breakfast at 7 the first week, we're going to eat breakfast at 8. Come on, everybody, we can do that. And then we're going to take the weekend off. Whoa. Then the next week, we're going to have breakfast at 9. And we're going to do that for 5 days. Come on, it's only 1 hour. And then we're going to take the weekend off. So
that's great. That's so good.
Yeah, we have to train to do this.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Now, the other great thing, you and I are huge fans of olive oil. And olive oil works because of the polyphenols that are in olive oil.
Yeah.
And people go, how am I going to remember that? Well, I like to say phenol. And there's some really cool studies that I talk about in the book that polyphenols, are the way the plant protects itself and its mitochondria, which are called chloroplasts, from damage, from sun damage, from stress, from insects. And it actually tells their mitochondria to uncouple, to blow off the pressure release valve. So when we eat polyphenols from plants, we get the benefit of the same uncoupling power. And so that explains why olive oil, which is rich in polyphenols, has such amazing health promoting properties. And I'm having several forms of green tea right now.
That's what I have in my cup.
Very good. Here's to you. Green tea is full of polyphenols. So is coffee.
Yeah. I also sell a Japanese green tea. I spent 24 years working in Japan, and I learned so much about green tea and the benefits of green tea. And I found some beautiful tea, and I have it every day, as I'm sure you do too. It is just tastes so great, and it's even good as an astringent on your face. If you drink your tea and put a little in a plate, and just even a towel or a paper towel, and just put it on it, it sort of tones and calms your skin, and it's really fantastic. Again, like olive oil, from the earth, been here a very long time, and
5,000 years.
Then, so what can be wrong with that, right?
Yeah, Sophia Loren, of course, always attributed her great beauty to olive oil. She not only drank a lot of it, but she put it on her skin. And that actually prompted me to develop a line of skincare products that has polyphenols in them. And you're right. So polyphenols.
And people are afraid of olive oil because it's fats. But you talked about fats, and we need fats. We need fats for our brain. We need fats. And I think of olive oil as a lubricant too. I think it's lubricating the car, the engine. It's helping in that. And olive oil has so many purposes. I mean, it's good for so many things in your life. There's 30 different things that I've researched that olive oil can do. And it should be a part of everybody's pantry. And I'm so glad that you talk about it as much as you do, and the importance of the polyphenols, and letting people understand that this is a great case of having a product that you put on your food, that you can put on your skin, you put it in your body, and it keeps that engine going. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting. Two of the blue zones actually use a liter of olive oil per week. That's about 10 to
Me.
12 tablespoons. Yeah.
That's
And
me.
there's a huge study out of Spain called the Predimed study that took people with known coronary artery disease who were 65 years of age. They made them use a liter of olive oil per week. They compared that to a low-fat diet. And at the end of 5 years, the people in the olive oil group had 30% new incidence of coronary artery disease. But what's really exciting is the people in the olive oil group actually gained memory, even though they were 5 years older. And the people in the low-fat group lost memory.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you, right?
I give it as gifts to families. I visit someone, I don't bring a bottle of wine. I bring a big bottle of olive oil.
One of my favorite sayings is the only purpose of food is to get olive oil into your mouth. And I firmly believe that.
Right. So in the keto diet, so I think fats, the quality of fats are good, and I really know how important it is for me. But when it comes to protein and the animal protein part of it, I sort of kind of like, I don't know. Tell me a little bit about that and the keto diet, how somebody who's not been getting protein from meat, what's the story there?
Well, first of all, there's no human need to eat animals for protein. I happen to be what I call a veg aquarian. I eat mostly leaves and vegetables during the week, and then my wife and I will have wild shellfish on the weekends, or we may not. But we know that, for instance, a gorilla and a horse have more muscle mass than we will ever have. And all they eat is leaves and grass. In fact, the largest animals on earth are leaf and grass eaters.
That's right.
Right? And again, my practice involves a lot of vegetarians and vegans. So the exciting thing is there's plenty of protein. There's actually 2 grams of protein in every cup of vegetables. There's lots of protein in pistachios and walnuts. Nuts are the staple of the Adventist diet at Loma Linda. Nuts are in everything. We make things out of nuts that you wouldn't believe. There's hemp hearts. Hemp is loaded with protein. And hemp's got a very great fat profile as well. I like mushrooms as a choice of proteins. And so there's no need to eat animals and to get on a ketogenic diet. And all my recipes and all my books have a vegetarian option and a vegan option, and this book is no exception. I happen to be a fan, since researching this book, of goat and sheep cheeses. And the reason for that is that they contain, first of all, goat and sheep eat weeds and grass. You really can't feed them grains, which is good news.
That is good news.
And 30% of the calories in goat milk and sheep milk is medium chain triglycerides, MCT oil. And MCT oil is a part of all my ketogenic diets because MCTs will convert instantaneously to ketones, regardless of what else you eat. And fascinatingly, if you look at two of the blue zones, the mountainous region of Sardinia, an island off the coast of Italy, and the Nagoyan Peninsula in Costa Rica, these two blue zones, what makes them unique is they're goat and sheep herders.
Right.
And so it's actually the goat and sheep cheese that extends their lifespan, not the grains and beans that they eat. Because
Yeah.
the folks in Lower Sardinia near the Mediterranean Sea don't have longevity. And the rest of Costa Rica that don't eat goat sheep cheese don't have longevity.
You know what's interesting about goat and sheep cheese? You know, my ethnic background, there's a lot of lactose intolerance, right? So,
Right.
And I learned that everybody was loving ice cream when I was a kid, but I was not loving it. And so ice cream just isn't part of my life. And recently, and I always stayed away from goat and sheep cheese, but recently I've been eating not big quantities, but small quantities of goat and sheep cheese. And first of all, it's like the most exciting thing in the whole world to have cheese of any kind, and not to feel sick. So I don't know how long it will last and if this will be something I can tolerate. But I am happy to hear that it has so many wonderful benefits in especially for longevity, and that I am trying to incorporate it in my diet now because I've been feeling okay.
Yeah, and goat and sheep have a protein called casein A2, which I profile in all my books. The one that people have trouble with is casein A1, which is in American cow milk cheese, unfortunately. And that's actually what a lot of people react to. And good news, there is no lactose in cheese. It's gone in the cheese making process. So, but if you're going to choose cheese, go for the goat and sheep cheeses or water buffalo. It turns out water buffalo have a similar profile.
People often talk about tofu and soy. What are your thoughts about that?
So, even if you look at the Okinawans, which is a blue zone, the Okinawans actually do not eat soy. They eat miso. But they do not eat soy or tofu. 85% of their calories, the traditional Okinawans, was from a purple sweet potato. And they do eat a little bit of rice, but it's white rice. So this idea that tofu is somehow longevity enhancing is not true. Soy has large amounts of lectins, and soy also contains a lectin that many people have never heard of called an aquaporin, which causes leaky gut. Now, the good news, which I announce in the new book, is that soy protein isolate, and it does not contain lectins. So if you read labels, and pea protein isolate does not contain lectins, but pea protein is a big mischief maker. You would not believe how many of my patients react to pea protein.
Right, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
If you're going to have soy, have tempeh. It's fermented soy. It's a little harder to find these days, true tempeh. It's been mixed with other grains, but fermented soy is safe. That's why miso is safe. The fermentation process destroys the lectins. But there is also hemp tofu, which is great.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion about tofu as a source of protein, and there's a lot of confusion, and I think we need to really look at the labels and understand how that works for us. But understanding the amount of protein we need and where it's coming from is the discovery we all need to make, because it doesn't have to come from the obvious places. I make sweet potato ice cream out of the purple sweet potatoes, the Japanese purple sweet potatoes, and I don't put any sugar or I don't put any sweet into it, and it is so delicious and it's so easy to make. It's just fantastic. Easy. And those purple sweet potatoes are great,
Yes.
by the way.
Yeah. So the purple sweet potatoes are full of polyphenols. That's where that
They're
color
so
comes from.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're so good.
And that's where the longevity came from in the Okinawans. They were getting all these polyphenols from the purple
Right.
sweet potato. So you mentioned, you eat the rainbow of vegetables. And in the book, I want everybody to think of when we say eat the rainbow, what you're actually saying is eat a vast array of polyphenols, because polyphenols are the colors in vegetables.
Yeah.
In fact, one way to think about it, in the fall, when the leaves turn these shocking oranges and yellows and reds, the green from the chlorophyll is gone, and those are the polyphenols in the leaves. So beautiful. So if you think beauty, think polyphenols. And if you
That's such a
swallow
great
polyphenols,
analogy. Yeah, that's so great.
Beauty from within. You and I are on the same wavelength.
So on your book, a final kind of the what you would like us. I'm an audible person, so I wasn't able to pre-order it, but as soon as I can, I sketch and I listen to my books that way. But
oh, great.
So tell us what you feel are the key points we will get from the book, the benefit of the book.
Well, it was kind of written as a weight loss book, but secretly inside that book is probably the key to a great lifespan and health span. It's hidden. I actually wanted a different title, but it's another story. It's actually, again, if you look at the secret to these super old people with thriving health, it's this uncoupled mitochondria. And I'll give you one more example. There's a theory of aging called the cost of living. And that is, if little animals usually have a high metabolic rate and they don't live very long, and big animals have a low metabolic rate and they live a long time. That's a generalization. The problem with the cost of living theory is birds. Birds live a very long time for their size. A parrot can live 80 to 100 years. A hummingbird can live 10 years in captivity with this monster metabolic rate. It turns out that birds have the most uncoupled mitochondria of any animal. And they uncouple their mitochondria. For instance, the nectar in the flowers of hummingbirds has retinoic acid. Most of us in facial care know retinoic acid, retinol. They get retinol, uncouples their mitochondria. The seeds that the birds eat actually contain polyphenols that uncouple their mitochondria. So I just want to be a bird. And the secret is in that book of how to uncouple your mitochondria. And you'll be surprised the number of fun ways you can do it. There's lots of fun little hacks to do it.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you make it easy to sort of find a way to incorporate it in your life. And I think, living a long life and keeping your weight and looking good while you do it, that's like a formula for a great book. So congratulations again. I'm sure it's going to be another big hit.
And I do all my Audible books, so you'll hear my voice.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
And just for your viewers and listeners, if they go to my website, gundrymd.com, I want to offer them a 30% off everything on my website.
Oh, cool.
And they use the code Gundry30, Gundry. And just